Hello everybody again, this is Vertigris, continuing my looks at the Vengeance Demon Hunter, the new hero class and spec added in World of Warcraft Legion. In this video I will be showing some highlights from a recent run I did in Black Rook Hold, one of the new dungeons introduced as well. I will be tanking this. There's a Disc Priest healing, a Shadow Priest, a Fire Mage, and an Elemental Shaman in the group. And I'll be going through and highlighting different fights and different mechanics of different fights and how I try to maintain my cooldown uptime as well as abilities. There was a lot of issues with tuning that we noticed. Some bosses definitely hit harder than others, and with that, let's continue on to the first boss fight. So the first thing that you'll notice as I'm getting him into position is that I'm generating as much pain as possible and pop demon spikes as soon as I can, because I always want to try to keep at least one charge of that on cooldown at any given time and maintain my active mitigation cooldowns throughout the fight, keeping as much uptime on those as possible. Right now, in regards to tuning, Demon Hunters feel like the squishiest of tank classes, and unfortunately the Disc Priest that I was with was not very strong himself. So I'll be doing Fellblade as much as possible, Shear to get that off cooldown, and Soul Cleave when I'm at like 80 or so pain, tries to not cap out my pain bar. You'll also notice that I'm avoiding a frontal cone attack that he does because it does a lot of damage and inflicts a debuff that increases damage taken by 20%. Right now you'll see me avoiding that and then going back in. I'll also try to keep my Infernal Strike recharging because that too generates 20 pain. Trying to keep that going throughout the fight, balancing that and Fellblade and the pain management and maintaining my active mitigation cooldowns rolling throughout the entire time is going to be very important. I also pulled him into this corner by a brazier to give the DPS and the healer as much room to work with, because many of his abilities will cause splash damage, and so they need to be able to spread out enough so that they're not all taking the damage. Right now I pop meta because I got really low and wanted to use all of that extra pain generation to try to top myself off. All in all, this fight is mechanically fairly simple, and most groups shouldn't struggle getting this one down. This brings us to our second boss. The second fight is against Ilisana Ravencrest. In the first phase, the only ability tanks really need to worry about is her Vengeful Shear. This is a physical damage attack that also increases damage taken by 15% for 25 seconds if you're not using active mitigation. As a Demon Hunter, you have a lot of active mitigation at your disposal, be it Demon Spikes, the Aldraki Warblade cooldown, or Metamorphosis. I didn't seem to think that Fiery Brand worked against this, but that may not be intended. Again, you want to stress your pain management, being able to maintain your active mitigation cooldowns as well as Soul Cleave as much as possible. So you're going to be wanting to Fellblade as usual, Shear to get that off cooldown, and use your Infernal Strike ability if you have that talented. In the second phase, you're going to want to have your ranged DPS focus on the boss while melee and the tank deal with the ad that spawns. The ad that spawns has a physical damage frontal cone ability that also causes a 4-second stun, so you'll want to be able to face him away from your group. During this second phase, Ilisana will also be casting Eye Beams, which follows around a player and leaves Fellblazed Ground, which inflicts fire damage over every second to anyone standing in that fire. So whoever has that on them needs to kite it away from the group, and also the rest of the group needs to pay attention to not stand in fire. Once the ad is down, the rest of the attention gets focused on the boss. I felt like the hitbox for melee was fairly small here, so I didn't feel particularly useful, but ultimately the fight was fairly simple, and you'll notice that when she dies, she just falls over the edge of the balcony around down the stairs. The third fight is against Smash Spite the Hateful, and he deals tons of damage to the tank. He has an ability Earth-Shattering Stomp, which knocks you away, which makes for a great time for you to use Infernal Strike to gain pain from it. He has Brutality, which charges up as his bar fills, and when he reaches 100, he will do Brutal Haymaker, which Smash Spite punches his current target, inflicting a lot of physical damage and increases their damage taken by 100%. Currently, he feels a bit overtuned. The damage he's inflicting seems really, really great. This was our best attempt for it, and unfortunately I die right at the end. It's very important on this fight especially to focus on your cooldowns, making sure you're mitigating the Brutal Haymaker. and trying to avoid any secondary applications of it. Also, by using your active mitigation cooldowns, you slow his gain for his energy bar. Once he hits that 100 brutality, that's when he uses the haymaker, and that's when you're going to be starting taking those loads and loads of damage. As always, try to keep your Demon Spike cooldown at least 1 stack in reserve. Never try to cap that out. Don't cap out your pain either. And use your Infernal Strike to re-engage or in place if you need the extra pain for soul cleaves. Our group also stood off to the side to try and mitigate damage taken from the Fellbats, who will vomit on a targeted player, and that vomit will create a pool that inflicts fire damage to anyone standing in it. I believe they're sitting on a crate or something, and that prevented the vomit from ever actually coming down. And aside from the massive damage that he deals, perhaps we weren't dealing with it properly. This fight is also fairly simple and straightforward, and it's just really managing keeping your tank alive during periods of increased damage. The last fight we're going to be looking at today is against Lord Kurtalos Ravencrest himself, and this one felt a little bit like controlled chaos, and also kind of like it's not quite finished yet. The main ability you're going to be looking out for in Phase 1 is called Unerring Shear, which is a very strong physical damage attack that also reduces your maximum health by 20%. So managing your cooldowns, as always, very important in this first phase. You'll notice that I'm still doing that normal pain management that I'm always doing, but taking so much damage, and with that reduced health, I'm soul cleaving a lot more than I usually did. And then when you transition in the second phase, apparently I wasn't quite topped up, and so I actually die. But it doesn't really seem to matter, because even though the healer died as well, because of a buff that you're granted in Phase 2 called Legacy of the Ravencrest, this increases the damage done, the healing done, and the maximum health of all the other party members by 300%. I sped up the rest of this fight because after that point it's really just about avoiding puddles on the ground. And with that, thank you for watching my video on Black Rook Hold and the Vengeance Demon Hunter. Please like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.